Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day. Want to welcome you all back to another segment of Album Spotlight. Now, the artist in the spotlight I've known about since my teens, so it's quite a few years ago. But I've not delved into their solo material up until about a few weeks ago. And I found out as of yesterday that on October 25th of 2024, this artist is releasing a 5 disc, 81 track collection called Retrospective, which I will be getting my hands on, especially after listening to the album that's in the spotlight today. That artist in the spotlight is Bryan Ferry, and the album in the spotlight is his ninth release, Mamouna. Mamouna was released on August 31st, 1994 in Japan, and September 5th in 1994 in the UK through Virgin Records originally. The album was produced by Bryan Ferry and Robin Trower of Bridge of Sighs fame. Upon release, Mamouna reached number 11 in the UK charts and a disappointing 94 in the US charts. The reason why I came across this album, as you saw from the graphic, was the 2023 reissue that was released on November 17th of that year through BMG Music Management. It is a triple disc reissue, which we'll get into more as I go on. Mamouna was recorded between 1988 to 1994. Now, this was his first album of original material in 6 years. His last album prior to Mamouna of original material was Bet Noir, which was released in November of 1987. That album was produced by Patrick Leonard and Bryan Ferry. Now, he had said about Mamouna that he was having difficulty finishing up song ideas for the album. So in 1993, he did an about face, and Bryan Ferry released an album of covers called Taxi, which was also produced by Robin Trower and Bryan Ferry. And he found that that experience for him to walk away from something that was challenging to him and to do something that was completely, basically, um, something different than what he was doing, completely different. He found that very rewarding. And he returned back to the material for for what would become Mamouna with more, I guess, energy and more enthusiasm. And now, Mamouna, I remember this album coming out, and I do remember this album being promoted a fair amount on Much Music back in 1994. But if you were to ask me any of the singles that were released on the album, from the album, sorry, uh, I wouldn't be able to tell you any of the singles because for some reason, and it's a shame. It's a shame. Mamouna has 10 tracks on it. It has a playing time of 45 minutes and 4 seconds. So relatively short compared to albums that are released today. And in terms of time span, the fact that Bryan Ferry was able to take 6 years at that point in time, from 1988 to 1994, to release Mamouna is staggering. I mean, these days, if you have an artist that takes 5 years to release albums, that's nothing new. But at this point in time, bands were releasing an album, either an album a year or an album every 2 years. So the fact that he was able to take that much time off in terms of recording material is staggering. Again, Mamouna, 10 tracks in total. All the tracks vary in time length between 3 minutes and 14 seconds to a maximum of 5 minutes and 44 seconds. So again, a very short album. And in terms of musicians that contributed to the album, you have the likes of Brian Eno, who co-wrote track 9, Wildcat Days, for the album. You have also Rhett Davies, who did some programming on track 7. And you also produced Avalon for Roxy Music and worked with Bryan Ferry going forward. Also, other artists of note are Phil Manzanera, who went on to work with David Gilmour, Guy Pratt, who also worked with Pink Floyd, David Gilmour. and Andy McKay, also members of Roxy Music. This album, Mamouna, does continue in the what is labeled as sophistopop kind of genre. Very tight production, very layered, very rich, dense production. But also in terms of the percussion, you also have Steve Ferroni providing drums on this album. Um, in terms of the percussion, very sparse production in terms of the percussion and drum tracks on this album. And I think for me, that's the beauty of it, where you you can have an album that is obviously very layered and very textured in terms of ethereal synths and guitars and bass, heavy bass oriented album, but also to make it sound very sparse in its delivery. That is the trick. Okay, and not very many artists can do that. Um, in this video, I'm going to be talking about also the unreleased album Horoscope. You can just see now with the eerie kind of artwork on the cover, and the album Sketches, which is a album of 10 tracks of um, rough ideas that would become Mamouna. So, starting with Mamouna, again, very layered, very dense, very textured album, 10 tracks in total. Songs of note for the from the album for me are Don't Want to Know, which leads off the album. Track two, New York City, which has the subtitle of Desdemona. Your Painted Smile, beautiful track. Mamouna, for me, is the title track, which is a fantastic piece of work. Again, Bryan Ferry's vocal delivery on this album, as with all of his albums, in terms of his later, more sophisticated pop kind of delivery, has a very ethereal effect, right? The shortest track on this album is called Your Painted Smile, track number 3. And I'm kind of disappointed in that track because once you start getting into the rhythm of the song and the textures on it, it ends very quickly. And as I said, it clocks in at 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Four of the tracks that were on Horoscope ended up on Mamouna. Okay. Other songs of note on this album are The Only Face, The 39 Steps, which features Nile Rodgers on rhythm guitar. Fantastic, very rhythmic, very percussive track. Which Way to Turn, another 5 minute plus track, beautiful. Wildcat Days, which is track 9 on the album, which is a co-write with Brian Eno. Again, very percussive, very rhythmic. Okay, ass shaker of a track, as I usually like to call them. Other songs of note on Mamouna are track 8, Gemini Dream, and the last track, track 10, Chain Reaction. Okay. Again, I don't know why this album didn't do as well in the US or Canada as it did in the UK and the rest of the world, because it does continue in the sort of very slick production, very much sophisticated pop vein, as did Avalon um, and Bête Noire and Boys and Girls from 1985. Now, moving on to Horoscope, which is the unreleased album from Brian Eno. This album, fantastic. Again, four of the tracks that were recorded for this album did end up on Mamouna. And there are 8 tracks in total. Fantastic album. I'll go through this with you. Where Do We Go From Here? Which turned out to be, which was a working title for the 39 Steps, which starts the album. The Only Face, again, which ended up on uh, Mamouna. And what I like about these versions, they are completely different from what you hear on Mamouna. The tracks you hear on Horoscope, the tracks that did end up on Mamouna, are completely different from what you hear on Mamouna, which I like. It gives it another dimension to the music. Other songs of note are Desdemona, New York City, track 3, S&M, which has a subtitle of Midnight Train, shortest track on the album. A version of Gemini Moon is on the album. Track 7, which is called Raga, Raga, which is one of the tracks that has a more reggae vibe to it, very reggae feel to it and rhythm to it. And track 8, the mammoth 9-minute plus, Mother of Pearl, which to me should have ended up on Mamouna as a finished track, but for some reason he kept it off the album. That would have made the album fantastic. It would have made it a more, I guess you could say, a more complete album for me. Okay, that's my only beef with this collection. Now moving on to the third album, which is called Sketches. This is a bunch of rough ideas that would eventually become the tracks that would end up on Mamouna. And on this album, you have instrumental versions of the title track, Your Painted Smile. And as I go down the list here, Your Painted Smile here, there's 3 versions of Your Painted Smile. You have the instrumental first draft mixing from 1989. You have a version of Your Painted Smile with guide vocal and a later version of it. And Your Painted Smile in a piano and vocal version. Okay. And they're all like within a minute to 3-minute versions of that track. Next on the album, you have Desdemona, New York City, excuse me, which was an instrumental. Robot, which is another instrumental track, which never made it onto Mamouna. And 2 versions of The Only Face, which are piano and vocal and instrumental first draft version from 1989. And Luke DeLee, which is an instrumental track, and the track Horoscope, which is track 10, which clocks in at 2 minutes and 21 seconds. So again, these are all just very rough ideas of the tracks that we're going to eventually end up on Mamouna. Now, again, when I listen to Mamouna, it does continue in the sophistopop vein, again, that he started with Avalon and continued with Boys and Girls and Bet Noir, okay? And I don't understand why it took him so long in order to complete this album, because this album, the only way I can describe it is if you know, picture yourself, if you can, at a resort. Okay, you're on vacation, you're at an all-inclusive resort, you're laying by the pool, right, with a book or a drink. It's like either late morning or mid-afternoon, and this music is coming through the speakers, through the PA system at the resort. It lulls you into a sort of dream kind of state. Okay, and as I said, it does continue in the vein of the albums prior, like Bet Noir, which was produced by Patrick Leonard and Bryan Ferry, and Boys and Girls, and Avalon prior to that. But Mamouna takes a step more into the art pop vein, where yes, there is percussion, it is very rhythmic, but the keyboards and synth textures take more of a prominent role on this album, and it does take you into sort of like I guess like a dreamlike state where you're listening to this album and almost 45 minutes go by and you really don't know where the time went because you're so entranced in this album with the kind of music that you're listening to on the album. It is amazing. So that's it. Please check out Mamouna. If you do know of Mamouna, you obviously do know of Mamouna if you're a Bryan Ferry fan. And please let me know in the comments down below what you think of Mamouna. As I said, after listening to this album, I've listened to it about 3 or 4 times, at least 4 times. And the more I listen to it, the more I'm liking it. So please check it out. Let me know what you think. And as I said, after listening to Mamouna and finding out that he's releasing a box set called Retrospective, I'm definitely going to dive into more of Bryan Ferry's material and get the retrospective box set when it comes out on October 25th. So that's it for now. Again, please let me know what you think of the album Mamouna. And if you know of the album at all, I forgot about this album even existed until I bought it a few weeks ago. Please let me know again what you think of the album in the comments below. And please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content that I've got coming up. I've got more videos coming up with Jim Bricker and Ken Cheshire and Mr. Bill Schuster. And I will see you soon, very soon, with another video. Bye for now.